My administration is officially declaring the opioid crisis a national public health emergency under federal law, and why I am directing all executive agencies to use every appropriate emergency authority to fight the opioid crisis.
The President and the Congress, in a bipartisan way, have passed a bill for $6 billion. We've had more money being spent now than we've had in decades. We need prevention, education, prevention, that's first. Don't get started on this path. Secondly, law enforcement is critical, and thirdly is treatment.
The not getting it right now is the fact that there are people who benefit from low-dose opioid therapy, and for those people who don't have access to those drugs, their quality of life markedly diminishes.
Unfortunately, the guidelines have been weaponized. And, doctors have been told, you follow the guideline and you have to get everyone down to 90 milligrams, per day. And now you have laws being passed, including, the big one right now is the Oregon Medicaid law, which says, chronic pain is no longer an appropriate condition for which to prescribe opioids whatsoever. So they've taken the CDC guideline, they've turned it from a voluntary group of recommendations into de facto law.
Whether you look at the CDC guidelines or this type of programming or the other guidelines that are circulating and out there nationally and at state levels, they pretty much all say the same thing, which is, we've been over-reliant, become too opiocentric in terms of our prescribing for chronic pain. And there are lots of reasons why that occurred. People are blaming everybody around, but the bottom line is, what do we do about it? How do we move forward? Our program is called Scope of Pain, which stands for Safe and Competent Opioid Prescribing Education. And it's really about looking at the use of opioids and putting it into perspective and balance. That is, if opioids are to be prescribed, how do you do it in a way that maximizes benefit and minimizes risk to that patient? I teach my students, it's impossible to know whether the person's pain is real or not. It really is. There's no way for you to tell. So believe them. Believe them 100% of the time. Because if you try to figure out whose pain is real and whose isn't, you're going to miss some people. You're going to think that someone who has really terrible pain doesn't have pain.
I felt really overwhelmed by the opioid epidemic, and the idea of trying to prescribe an opioid to a patient seemed foreign to me. We're taught throughout our 4 years of training how to identify patients who might benefit from an opioid prescription, and then also help treat those patients either with an opioid prescription if that's appropriate, or find another alternative for their treatment plan.
It's not just a disc injury, it's not just some underlying injury to the tissue pathology, it's about the person who's suffering emotionally, psychologically, vocationally, financially. How you treat that is not just by sticking a needle in the patient or prescribing narcotics to them. It's about having the patient undergo true integrated multidisciplinary care where the patient's needs are met, whether it's more emotional needs for behavioral treatment, more functional-based treatments when they're struggling to walk and to care for themselves, and not relying solely or primarily on opioid therapy.
Boston Pain Care, we do integrated care and interdisciplinary care. We have interventionalists. We do thermal ablations. We do spinal cord stimulation. We do functional rehabilitation. We have behavioral services, since all chronic pain has a strong psychological component to it.
Neuromodulation has had great advancements. Neuromodulation involves essentially placing an electrical device inside someone's body to change how the nervous system is signaling pain signals from someone's back or legs or arms to the brain. So the idea is that if we can change how those pain signals are reaching the brain where patients are perceiving them and lessen those pain signals, we're able to lessen the patient's suffering and hopefully improve their quality of life and functioning.
They're actually put to sleep. So the ketamine is working on the NMDA receptors. It's a blocker, so it blocks the pain fibers. It blocks the signals from getting into your central nervous system. And it's almost, as some people describe it, and some of the literature describes it, as a reset button. So it's resetting your neurologic system so that your body does not perceive pain in the same phenomena.
I beg those of you who have chronic pain who are being cut back just to hold on, try to tread water, use all your resources, because help is on the way.